Thank you, and good evening to this evening's meeting of the Horsham Planning Committee. I am Councillor Ellis Brown, and I will be chairing most of the proceedings this evening, and I shall be supported by the Vice Chair, Councillor Van der Boer, on my left, and the professional officers. Thank you. Thank you for attending, and may I remind members of the public, this is not a forum for the public to ask questions or challenge the points raised during debate by officers or members of the committee or other speakers. You must not engage with members or call out during the meeting. If you have requested to speak, when invited to do so, please take your position over on the table over there and keep to your allotted time. Your comments and discussion points must be relevant to the application the committee is considering. I will also remind everyone here, please show respect to each other throughout the meeting. Please refrain from any personal comments relating to the council, officers and members of the committee or other members of the public. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so should you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit, which is in the two far corners of the chamber. And the benefit is we meet outside the Lynn Cross Public House. We're not expecting, May I also ask council members and members of the public to please switch off mobile phones or turn them to silent. Remember to turn on the microphones before speaking and turn them off when you have finished. Members, when you are voting, make sure your arm is clearly raised so that we can accurately capture the vote. I also remind members on the committee you cannot vote on applications within your own ward. Before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right.
Nick Pettifer, Senior Planning Officer.
Emma Parks, the Head of Development and Building Control.
I'm so sorry. Felicity Thomas. I'm a planning barrister. I'm your legal advisor tonight. I've got laryngitis, so I'll be speaking very softly.
Melissa Stella, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence and notification of substitute members.
Okay, we have received apologies from Councillor Blackburn and apologies from Councillor Paul Clark, with Richard Landau substituting for him.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of July. Can I take these as approved? You can. Thank you very much. Announcements from the chair. Announcement. Councillor Trollope.
So I'm just aware that Hannah Butler did make every attempt to attend today, but I must have sent her apologies or not.
Yes, we are aware that
Okay, that's
Councillor
fine.
Butler won't be here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, announcements from, or declarations of members' interest. Agenda item number 9, I shall be stepping down. This is a DC 250150, Peacock's Paddock, and this is close to where I live, and I know the applicants. And I will also leave the chamber at that point, and the Vice Chair will chair that agenda item. Thank you. No further announcements from me or the Chief Exec. Oh, sorry, Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, both myself and Councillor Croker are ward members for item number 6, Horton landfill site. So we will not be voting, but we will be speaking. And secondly, I have to declare an interest on item 9 because I also know the applicants and I will be leaving the room during that application.
Thank you very much. Appeals, any comments on the appeals at all? Thank you very much. So taking the first application this evening, this is DC 240374, Horton landfill site, gas and electricity site, Henfield Road, Smaldole. Please could the officer make their presentation to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you. The application site comprises an area of just over 14 hectares that forms part of the old Small Dole landfill site, situated just south of the settlement of Small Dole. Seen here in context to the River Ada, the South Downs National Park, and a number of public rights of way. In more detail, this is a site in relation to the built-up area boundary of Small Dole, with the black dotted line, the areas of ancient woodland seen in green, the listed buildings, public rights of way, and the South Downs National Park boundary, which is the yellow hatched area. Also on the plan, you can see the existing Horsham power plant on the site and the angling lake. Being a former landfill site, the land has been appropriately capped and remediated with a leachate treatment area, which is on plan in blue, and is now subject to a long-term restoration programme for 60 years, which falls under the control of West Sussex County Council's Minerals and Waste Planning Regime. That's the orange area. You can also see on this plan that there's a triple SI, which is a clay pit in the top corner, which is in purple. The planning application before you is set within the red line area and the green area on the plan, which would also use the existing vehicular access of Henfield Road to the southeast. For context, this is an aerial view of the site when it was in use as a landfill site, about 2001. We have a plan showing the proposed restoration and planting from the West Sussex County Council approved Landscape Restoration and Aftercare Management Plan, referenced as a LRAMP. The most recent aerial mapping, you can see areas of woodland to the south and the east sides and the existing hedgerow which forms a cross in the middle of the site. That's the 2025 aerial mapping. The proposal seeks permission for a 12.5 megawatt solar farm using fixed panels at a 30-degree angle across the site, supported by necessary infrastructure such as deer-proof fencing, CCTV, access tracks and transformer stations as marked on the plan. Additionally, there would be a small BESS, which is a battery energy storage system, capable of storing and then discharging some 4 megawatts of energy back into the grid as and when needed. The BESS would be located close to, but separated by at least 50 metres from the existing Horsham power plant. Additionally, there will be new sustainable drainage features to the site, which will be suitably designed so as not to interfere with the soil capping over the landfill, and new planting and hedgerows to provide mitigatory screening, as well as the required biodiversity net gain. The new planting would work in addition to the restoration planting already established as part of the restoration programme and would form part of the long-term BNG monitoring obligations for 30 years. It's important to note that the wider ongoing restoration works under West Sussex County Council's control within the wider site area would remain in place and would remain subject to respective planning conditions already granted under the Minerals and Waste Planning Regime. The area within the red line will become subject to the current application and suggested conditions. The panels will be fixed by way of ground anchors, which are, in this instance, designed specifically to work within the topsoil depth of the capping above the former landfill site. The BESS would be mounted on a concrete plinth and would comprise a series of units similar to the image on the screen. The BESS units would be lithium iron phosphate batteries, and not the more volatile lithium ion, which we understand to offer better thermal stability. Officers have visited the site and have also walked along the footpaths to the west to gain an understanding of how the site would interact with the wider landscape character, noting the elevated South Downs National Park. Here is the site from Henfield Road to the east, which is set behind the boundary vegetation, and the land rises up and screens development from public views along the highway. Some mid-range views available from the land to the south at Nightingale Cottage and from the river corridor to the southwest. And these are some views from the site itself, looking out in various directions. On the bottom slide, bottom photo, you can see the conical roof of the existing Horsham power plant and the on-site works huts. And finally, some views which are provided by the applicant in the landscape visual impact assessment and setting out the existing visual impact of the site within numbered views, and with 1 year and 15-year forecast impacts where the views of the site are likely to occur, and with mitigatory planting in place. You will note that these views have been taken in winter and show minimal leaf coverage. So I've tried to mark the site so it's clear. I appreciate they're long distance views, but you can see the existing baseline, year 1 and 15. Again, existing year 1 and 15. Again, they follow the same format, existing baseline, year 1 and 15 years. No visual impact on these from that site. Year 1 and 15. Apologies if I'm scanning through these, but I can always refer back to them if needed. This one's from the south. Some further views where there's no visual impact. This one's from the public right of way to the northwest. And again, existing year 1. Oops, that one's not come through. And some further views. The proposed solar farm would have the ability of generating some 12.5 megawatts of renewable energy, equivalent to powering around 3,500 homes, along with an on-site battery storage facility capable of storing and discharging power back onto the grid when needed, contributing to a stable energy supply and associated storage capacity. This is a substantial benefit that attracts significant weight in the planning balance, particularly as the site already benefits from an existing grid connection and has additional capacity. Overall, the proposal would contribute towards achieving the UK's net zero target for emissions and would also contribute towards providing additional renewable energy for us all, both of which contribute towards limiting our impact on global climate change. Given this imperative in mitigating the effects in climate change, the benefits of this proposal attract significant weight in the planning balance. Planning considerations have therefore been had to the following. Landscape designation. The site is close to the South Downs National Park and therefore within the setting of the National Park. The NPPF gives national parks the highest status of protection, and that development within their setting should be sensitively designed to avoid or minimise adverse impact. The panels are made with anti-reflective coated glass designed to absorb light, which reduce the risk of glint and glare, much more so than with standard glass. We also have a landscape strategy to include for additional planting and trees that would create additional screening to the site as per the LVIA viewpoints that have just been presented. The proposal is considered to work with the statutory duties of the National Park, which are to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the parks and promote opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of the parks to the public. The Council's Heritage Officer is satisfied that the likely impact on the nearby listed buildings will be indirect and not harmful on account of the intervening distance. The local lead flood authority are also satisfied with the flood risk and drainage strategy, which was prepared by the applicant to address potential flood risk and surface water drainage. A number of conditions are included to ensure development includes suitable SUDS features. The submitted details include sufficient information to ascertain any likely impact on protected and priority species, and subject to the suggested conditions and mitigation measures, no adverse impact would arise to wildlife or biodiversity. BNG would be secured on site by way of a legal agreement and a 30-year management and monitoring programme, which is underway with our legal team. In terms of fire and safety, we understand that the applicants have an existing solar farm on a former closed landfill site at Westbury in Wiltshire, which has been operational since 2014. Design of the solar installation would not involve any intrusive works into the landfill mass beyond the capping system, with ducts and cables being at ground level, and all infrastructure works are designed to avoid the existing gas extraction system. The existing low-level gas extraction system and the proposed solar farm would ensure that each system is separate and provided with appropriate separation distances. The ground anchors are designed to suit the soil depth over the landfill mass, which was implemented with a 1 metre soil depth. UK best practice advises 2.5 to 5 metres minimum clearance distance between adjacent utilities or hazardous zones, and the proposed BESS would satisfy that existing distance from the gas extraction plant with a 10 metre combustible vegetation exclusion zone. The BESS installation takes account of current guidance and there is a condition included which would require the submission of a detailed emergency response plan, which is to be prepared in consultation with the local fire and rescue services, considering elements such as toxic plume potential, fire water containment and access to firefighting water, amongst other requirements. Therefore, given that the proposed development does not raise any adverse landscape harm, noting that the concerns can be mitigated by way of landscape enhancements and a fire safety protocol condition, officers find that the proposal is acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions shown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no public speakers this evening, but I do have an announcement. Following a discussion at the Chair's briefing yesterday, there will be an informative added to this application regarding condition 6 and the provision of a detailed fire safety report. This informative will seek that the fire strategy captures the points noted by Councillor Livingston in his email dated the 1st of August. The release of the condition will be shared with the Vice Chair and Chair of the committee. Councillor Livingston, are you comfortable with this approach?
I am, and thank you for putting this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. As there is no need to have a proposal or second on the informative, could the officer ensure that that is captured in the minutes of the meeting? Thank you. I now will open this for debate by members. Thank you. Councillor Knoll, yes.
Thank you, Chairman, and the officers for that report and other members of the committee. I'm not now speaking as a committee member, but speaking on behalf of my ward residents and from my own experience of living around the Small Dole area, as well as recently visiting the site. Although I will not be voting, I do feel this application requires much further consideration than the present report allows, notwithstanding the informative that we've just been told about. But my objection is principally for two reasons. Firstly, its position just 300 metres from the national park, making it a true blot on the landscape to the detriment of one of our most beautiful assets in the district. And secondly, the inherent danger of siting solar panels on top of a methane production site. This application, as we've just heard, is for a solar panel array packed as tightly as possible over the area, together with best storage and subsequent grid distribution. I cannot imagine a situation where amongst all this electrical equipment, there is never a danger of an ignition spark that could start a methane-fuelled fire. We all recognise that solar panels are a vital part of our lives and that ideally every house that we permit should have solar roofs and internal batteries. I'm aware that the proposed panels are anti-glare, but both our landscape architect and the SDMPA reports refer to a large area of incongruously dark ground cover. It wouldn't be so bad if this ground cover was not on top of an artificial hill. I visited the site last Saturday and spent several hours walking all the available footpaths, and that's apart from the PROW, because there are footpaths to the south and to the east which surround this whole site of over 36 acres. I did not enter the site, but managed to walk all around it. Looking towards the downs from the west side, I could see beyond Chanctonbury Hill as far as Kithurst Hill, and from the other side, beyond New Timber as far as Woolstonbury Hill. And I was lower down than where the panels will be placed. According to the South Downs Way map, this is a distance of 27 kilometres, and that's more than a day's walk along the South Downs Way, with this area constantly within the walker's view. And that's using the principle, if I could see the South Downs Way, then the South Downs Way could have seen where I was standing. According to the National Parks planning guidance, any development should be sensitively located and designed to avoid adverse impact. A very short history of the site, which will take me 1 minute, from my own knowledge, is that this area, amongst two other local sites, was used to dig clay for house building. And this one started around 1900 and was worked until the end of the century and had millions of tons of clay removed from it. In the 1990s, household rubbish began to be tipped back into this massive hole, and again, millions of tons of untreated waste, not only filling the quarry, but forming the large artificial hill that we see today. This landfill continued until about 2010, and a new soil cover over the waste was finished in 2013. Nobody seems to know exactly how deep this cover is, but if viewed from Google Earth, and we saw the pictures a little while ago, it can be seen that the proposed species-rich grassland that was meant to be there has spectacularly failed due to the soil used, and therefore many local residents do not believe there is any significant depth to the soil cover. West Sussex County Council, the responsible body at the moment, for monitoring the site from 2016 for 60 years. So at present, we're not even 10 years into the 60-year legally required restoration period. On my visit, finally, although prevented from getting on the site by barbed wire and locked gates, what I did see, apart from a few scrubby bushes, were many vertical tubes over the site that looked like sewage vent pipes, which had been placed through the topsoil to help the dispersal of methane and other gases. There are also many liquid pump casings over both this site and the adjacent Hales site that was being filled at the same time, which, when I've walked by in the winter, emit a continual clanking sound as the leachates get pumped out from the slowly sinking sites into the River Ada. I saw the existing small methane production site to the west, which is obviously still functioning, and followed another pipeline down to the river, which even in this dry season is still pushing out leachate and contaminating the water downriver. Finally, I noted the little yellow triangles with black letters EX placed at the entranceway to every footpath towards the site. When I got home, I checked on Google to see the exact meaning of this warning, and this is what it said. And I'm going to ask the chairman's permission to hold up a picture just showing these EX signs.
Councillor, I'm
The
not giving
camera
you
can't
permission
pick it
yet to
up.
hold it up.
The camera can't pick it up.
Could you
It
bring
says
your note? Could
It
you bring
says
your comments to a conclusion, please?
I will. This is my last word. These signs signify explosive atmosphere, and that's on Google. So, in conclusion, is this committee really prepared to commit itself to such an environmental time bomb? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comment? Councillor, I'll come to you. Councillor Croker. I will
Thank you,
remind you that it is 5 minutes unless the discretion of the chair. So, thank you.
I'll bear that in mind. Firstly, I must express my regret that at least one concerned resident who would have liked to address the committee today only received written notification of this meeting last Saturday. That is too late to register to speak. This is not how we should be conducting our business if we wish to maintain a semblance of credible public accountability. While some of their concerns have been expressed in the committee report and in Councillor Knowles' address, I would like to take a moment to state some of the points they would have made had they been able. Firstly, lack of community involvement other than a presentation over a year ago. The residents were aware of this application, but are extremely disappointed that the applicant has not attempted to maintain contact with the community. The announcement of today's meeting came as a great surprise. This is a large site relative to Small Dole, and previous operators have better involved the community around prospective changes. Creation of a liaison group should be conditioned. Generally speaking, the majority of existing solar farms are placed on flat, low-grade agricultural land with low levels of visibility. The proposed Horton tip siting is on top of an artificial mound of decomposing waste that is visible from the South Downs for several kilometres either side of the Ada Valley Gap. It is also visible from the A2037 leading to Henfield Road and neighbouring houses. Thirdly, this visibility issue could be ameliorated by A, increasing the width of the proposed additional tree planting on the south-facing slopes of the tip, and B, by removing some of the proposed panel rows on the southern edge of the tip. This would not affect the electricity output greatly, but would significantly reduce the visual impact from the downs, the road, and the adjoining properties that are overlooked by the site, including a Grade 2 listed cottage. Finally, the method of mounting the panel frames needs to be better explained to give confidence that they will withstand the winter gales. Construction cannot penetrate the capping, which is there to control methane and leachate emissions. So that was from the residents. Personally, when reading the papers prior to this meeting, I was struck by a phrase in the planning information pack, which said, Horsham landfill has been restored and is of little value, which begs the question, of course, to whom? If to the owners, then I would tend to agree. However, for the residents of Small Dole, I would suggest that it has great value. Not so much for what it is today, a slowly greening hillside, nothing that remarkable in the landscape, but as to what it no longer is. As Councillor Knoll has already said, this site was worked for a long time as a tip, suffering several extensions of use and increase in fill height over several decades, with residents continually exposed to HGV movements, noise, dust and smell over that period. Nevertheless, I have been struck by the willingness of some residents, recognising the environmental benefits that solar PV electricity generation can have, to accept some form of solar farm on the Horton site, with caveats around environmental protection and reduction in visual impact. Of the former, there are concerns that I share that the necessary ground anchors for the 3.4 metre high panel frames will risk increasing water penetration of the old landfill site. This is a nominal 1 metre soil over 1 metre clay cap, and penetration could lead to increasing the already unacceptable leachate discharge into the Ada, or releasing more foul-smelling, inflammable landfill gases. Bear in mind that this tip is expected to reduce in height by around 20% over the next few decades. So we're talking 5 or 6 metres here. Is there a risk of significant water collecting voids opening up around or under the ground anchors, perhaps? There is also the matter of the proposed location of the BES, just 25 metres from the landfill gas storage area. And I agree that the submitted outline fire strategy needs significant revision. In conclusion, I consider that the proposal before the committee is in conflict with Horsham District Planning Framework 24.1 around promoting the appropriate reuse of sites. I regard this proposal probably as inappropriate. HDPF 25.4 regarding conserving and where possibly enhancing the setting of the South Downs National Park, which it doesn't improve. HDPF 36, where we will permit schemes where they do not have a significant adverse effect on landscape, I believe it does, or townscape character, biodiversity, heritage, or cultural assets or amenity value. Putting the panels on this site will affect its amenity value. As explained earlier, this site, if managed in the way originally intended, would offer significant visual amenity to the local residents, not to mention a relatively undisturbed home for flora and fauna. It does, of course, support HDPF 35 on climate change, but I consider that there are significant unknowns around fire prevention and management and the means to maintain the integrity of the soil cap over time, that this application should be deferred until the local community can be reassured that they are not being dumped on yet again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just quickly before my colleague comes back on the detailed points, I'm sure you don't need me to remind you of this, members. Sorry, it's very echoey, isn't it? Obviously, we have got 2 local members here, but we're all members are here as part of planning committee and are planning committee members, and we're making decisions in the best interests of the district as a whole. And obviously that was part of the Reimagine Planning Committee here, and to ensure we have that focus. So I'll ask my colleague to come back on the detailed points, but I thought it was useful just to clarify that point. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the potential visual impact, our landscape officer, landscape consultant, has reviewed the LVIA and the verified views that are set out, and is satisfied that the proposed visual harm would reduce with the addition of planting, the mitigatory planting, and at 15 years that would reduce to negligible. The views are also part of a wider panoramic view, so they're not specifically focused on the application site in isolation. So this site would sit very much amongst a wider panorama of views available from the elevated South Downs National Park. In terms of the fire prevention elements like that, we have got a condition that secures details to be submitted to us in consultation with the fire service. And if it's considered necessary, we could ask for specific details of those ground anchors to make sure that both us and West Sussex are satisfied that the depth and the details wouldn't adversely impact on the landfill that's underneath the ground capping and the membrane. And I believe the other points are covered in the committee report. Thank you.
Councillor Frankland.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So thanks for the report from the planning officer. I found the projection of the distant views really useful. I'm very familiar with the South Downs. I spent a lot of time up there, and I always feel that those views north towards the North Downs are spectacular. The kind of the best feature in some ways of the South Downs is that view, and so I really have some sympathy with anything that has that may have an impact there. Though I am encouraged by what you say about the planting and the long-term impact on the views. I suppose the thing that I am concerned about, I perhaps need some advice on this, is what happens if we put another and multiple PV farms across the land between the North and South Downs? At what point does our planning framework and policies mitigate or eliminate, not eliminate, but to control harmful impact of a multitude of these sorts of developments? Can you give us some perhaps guidance on how that might be controlled or mitigated?
Thank you. As part of the landscape visual impact assessment, there is something that carried out called a cumulative impact. So these things are looked at in relation to other similar sites or other large major development sites within the area. So this site has taken account of the other solar site, which is at Huddleston Farm, which is to the west of this site, and the landscape consultant is satisfied that in that instance that there's sufficient distance and the other PV site at Huddleston would not interact with this one. So the answer is, if another application comes in within the same view, that would be subject to a cumulative impact, visual impact study, and that would be assessed at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened carefully both to the two members who have spoken, as well as the planning officer, and read the report. I just want to say that all the particular questions I had have been answered by the responses we've had. I can see from the report that over time, the landscape officer has been satisfied with the mitigation that's been proposed and how the application has been changed. I can see that the Waste Planning Authority has gone into great detail about the capping and, the impact of this being on top of a waste tip, essentially. I think the only area where perhaps we haven't had any feedback, it would be in relation to the South Downs National Park Authority. And I wonder if the planning officer can make some further comments about that, because that is, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only loose end left.
Thank you. Okay. Whilst we're checking the consultation,
Thank you, Lynn.
can I just make
So the South Downs National Park Authority did provide comments. In making no comment on the principle of the development, the site is approximately 300 metres from the boundary of the national park, which at its closest point is situated to the east. They've gone down to reminding us of the development within the setting of national park should be consistent with section 245 duty in paragraph 182 of the NPPF. Which now includes specific reference to the setting of the national parks. And they've also reminded us of the statutory duties of the national park. So they've concluded with: the solar farm would be viewed in the context of other development. This is both industrial and residential in nature. From the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment viewpoints, the proposed development would present as a large area of incongruously dark ground cover, I think was mentioned before. It is unclear from the submission how much the site currently contributes to the green rural character of the wider area. In regards to the balance to be weighed by the LPA officers, the positives of the use of the site to generate renewable energy needs to be weighed against the potential negative impacts on the setting of the national park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and it does then go on to say that the planting proposed should be native and locally characteristic in order to offer meaningful benefits to wildlife and positively contribute to landscape character. Can we really enforce that that does happen and that it's actually maintained and doesn't bite the dust in about 10 years' time? Thank you.
Yes, so normally a landscape condition would carry a requirement for replacement within 5 years, but as this site is covered by BNG, it would actually be monitored for 30 years. So again, the wider site is covered by the ongoing 60-year West Sussex duties. We would be looking at the site area within the red line, and that would be subject to a 30-year monitoring and maintenance programme for the BNG. Thank you.
Councillor van der Boer, then I will come to Councillor Croker.
Just to follow up on what Councillor Croker said about a liaison committee, is that something we can encourage these guys to do? Sounds like a pretty good idea.
Could you repeat that again?
Councillor Croker raised the possibility of having a liaison committee. And I just wonder whether or not, you know, too often local residents are sort of in the dark on these things, and maybe these guys, because it is the nature of it, they should be liaising more closely with the community.
Thank you, Councillor van der Berg. We would certainly encourage it. It's not something we can require through the planning system, but, you know, we always find with developments that it's much more positive when local residents are engaged actively by the developers or the applicants of a scheme. So we would always encourage that, but unfortunately it's not something we can require through the planning system.
Thank you. Councillor Croker, then I'll come to Councillor Trollope.
Thank you again, Chair. I was just going to make a comment about the LVIA. Members might have noted that the photos were taken in the middle of winter. In the middle of winter, sun angles are very low, even at midday when these were taken. In that case, you get a lot of shadows. Shadows are quite dark. I'd suggest that it gives a somewhat different impression of the landscape and the effect of a large black lump in it than it might do in midsummer. I'll just leave members with that thought. Thank you.
So thank you. Yes, so the LVIA does include views taken in January. Obviously, that's when leaf cover is less. Normally, LVIAs are recommended to be undertaken during winter, if possible, to give kind of the worst case scenario. I myself and the landscape officer did visit the site previously, and I believe it was pretty hot. It was pretty warm, so I imagine it would have been sort of all spring, summertime. But you've got more vegetation in summer. So you might have a lower sun angle in winter, but you've got more vegetation coverage in summer.
Thank you. Councillor Trollope, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Councillor Croker, in his first address, mentioned the idea of scaling a modest scaling back of some of the solar panels, which would have an impact. I don't know what I don't know what impact X is, but would have an impact on the visual nature of the site. Would the planning officer be able to sort of comment on his proposal? And perhaps it might even require, I didn't take notes, so I don't have the specifics of what Councillor Croker actually suggested, but it did seem like a good idea.
Obviously, we need to consider the proposal before us with the quantum of development proposed, not a different scheme. You know, it quite often, and not necessarily on this application, but obviously if there are significant concerns or the landscape officer's got concerns, schemes are amended along the way. Obviously in this particular scheme, it's considered that the impact is acceptable, and my colleague has discussed the negligible impact at 15 years. So I think our view is it's not reasonable to scale it back, and that would not be the subject of this current application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure, as a ward councillor and therefore not voting, what I can suggest. But if I can suggest, could we ask for a vote on a deferment of this to gain further information, especially from the South Downs National Park, who quite honestly, and I respect the SDMPA, have just sat on their hands on this one and haven't made any significant comment at all. Having a development, even though it's a solar panel one, 300 metres away, I'd have thought they should have been able to make a decent comment about it. And I would prefer very much if we could also examine the good work that Councillor Livingston has done towards the prevention of electrical fires on the site, and take into account suggestions for reducing the amount of panels so that the view is not quite so devastating from the South Downs National Park.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. As a planning committee member, you can, my understanding is you can request a deferral because you are here as a planning committee member, not as a local member. So just to make that clear. But so you can suggest a deferral or put forward an alternative motion. But obviously, you know, in terms of my advice on that matter is that would need to be reasonable on clear grounds. I think we've discussed the condition proposed in terms of fire safety, which reflects the condition that the task and finish group for the best storage recommended. That's on there. We have a draft strategy. We've suggested an informative to capture some further points, which would come forward as part of any formal discharge of condition. We've consulted the South Downs National Park. They've provided their comments. So I think it's not necessarily reasonable to defer to seek further comments when those have already been provided. So I guess I'm just unclear what exactly you're suggesting to defer it for. That is not already covered within the conditions and the assessment of the application. Thank you.
Yes.
Can we ask for legal advice on that point? I'm really, and this is not about the specific point, it's about the procedural point. If a member is recused from voting in relation to this being their ward, surely they should also be recused from any other specific action in relation to the procedure relating to that item. So in that interpretation, they would not be able to propose a deferral. Okay. Forgive me, it's not that I disagree, I'd just like clarity on that.
Well, I can clarify that, having discussed it with the monitoring officer. If you're on the committee and it's in your ward, you are not entitled to vote. However, you can put forward a motion. That's my understanding. I don't know that they can put forward a motion. So, Councillor Knoll, if he wishes, can put forward a motion, but as the officer explained, there needs to be a very, very sound reason for doing so, because the points were raised have been addressed in the report, and in particular, the fire safety strategy has been addressed by putting an informative in the application.
I'm just consulting the Constitution and the various codes of practices. Just to, it does seem that it's a bit definitely allowed to take part in debate, definitely not allowed to vote. But the situation we have here is somewhere between those two. So I'm just trying to find the detail.
Chairman.
Councillor Knoll, yes.
I'm not sure that we addressed the concerns that my colleague, Councillor Croker, voiced for a reason for deferment that he actually proposed. Could we go back to his proposal, please?
Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. I think I need a little bit of guidance from my colleague. It's polite, was it?
If I may. I think it was to do with thinning down, expanding the width of the vegetation, whether they could look into that.
Information.
Yes, that was one of the, within what I regarded as the residents' remarks, which I do agree with. But again, is this something we? Sorry, I'm not explaining myself. Yeah, I would see that as another reason for deferment. Yes, if that is an acceptable approach. Or is it a bit like the number of panels that's fixed now that we can't change anything?
Can we have the slide back up, please? The area of landscaping, it is shown. Obviously, the precise details will be subject to a condition, but I think the actual kind of the area is shown here. So I don't think we can reasonably expand upon that. Obviously, we can look at the exact details of the planting, and there's been comments about ensuring they're native, etc. But I think that you've got the areas there, and that's the proposal, and that's on the basis of which that negligible impact at 15 years has been assessed. If you've got a negligible impact at 15 years, I think it's hard to justify then further planting, in my professional opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Knoll.
I believe my colleague Councillor Croker also mentioned the fact that if some of the area of panels was reduced so that planting could progress further up the slope, so it would only be visible from directly above, I think I certainly would be totally happy with that. It's not the whole idea of putting solar panels there that we object to. I feel that I object to the visibility around the whole site, and if the amount of panels could be reduced so they sit on top of the hill rather than down the sides of the hill, then the visibility would not be so great as it is now.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Nearly called you Councillor Craig there. I think I did mention this before in terms of this is the proposal before you, and I think a deferral can be used to gather information that you consider, for instance, is critical to your decision making. A deferral can't really be used to change the proposal that you have. Obviously, if you consider the impact is so great, then it's a refusal. Obviously, that's strongly not the advice of officers, and ultimately you need to make a decision on the scheme before you. I don't feel it will be reasonable to defer it to reduce the scheme to something different to what has been submitted. Thank you.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Councillor Livingston.
Yeah. Going back to the beginning of the presentation, we saw some photographs of when it was used as a landfill site. Now, what we've got here is a lot better than what it was then. We need solar panels. We need a resilient electrical supply for this country. As long as the risks are understood and mitigated necessarily with regard to fire safety, etc., then from what I see, I'm minded to approve this application.
Councillor Mercer.
Can we move to a vote, Chairman, on the recommendation?
I will note that. But, Councillor Mercer has asked if we can go to the vote. We will shortly, but I need to ask Councillor Croker and Councillor Knoll, do you have a justifiable motion, or sound motion, to go for a deferral? As yet, I've not heard anything for that.
As we're opposite ends of the room, Chairman, is it possible that I could actually confer with my colleague?
Sorry?
No. But by all means, comment, but obviously it has to be a motion put forward by a particular member, and whilst you perhaps you would have a small break to define your reasons, you have to have a reason to move forward, and I think we found it difficult to substantiate really what that is. So my view is that that's not a reasonable approach.
Okay. Therefore, I am going to move that we go to the vote on this particular application. And the recommendation from the office is to approve full planning permission subject to an appropriate conditions and a completion of necessary section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as agreed by the director of place acting reasonably and properly.
Chairman, and the informative that you talked about.
We've noted that. I asked the officer to note that in the minutes, but that will include the informative. Don't need a second to do it. Okay, all those in favour, please show.
That's 12 in favour.
All those against?
No objections?
Any abstentions?
No abstentions.
Okay, therefore the application has been approved. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next application, which is DC 192464 Berkeley Homes Development Site, Worthing Road, Southwater. Just give the officer a moment or two to get set up.
Hello, good evening members. This application returns to committee due to new material planning considerations as detailed in the committee report. As shown on the slide, the application relates to phase 5 of the council's adopted local plan Southwater Strategic Site SD10, which is an allocation. Earlier phases benefit from reserve matters approval, and build out has progressed to phase 3.2. So on the slide now is the latest layout version. Both phases 4 and 5 are shown combined, and the revised water neutrality strategy as presented is acceptable to Natural England, and it satisfies eligibility for access to the council's water certification scheme. And the amended housing mix continues to be compliant with local plan policy, including the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan. So on the slide now shown is marked up some areas of change, which shows how the additional 14 homes have been assimilated into the layout and the drainage strategy in officers' views sympathetically. And further material harm that has arisen onto planning considerations, including heritage, landscape, townscape and ecology matters, compared to the 2022 resolution, is avoided. That's subject to mitigation and enhancements by condition and legal agreements that's set out in the committee report. And so in overall conclusion, the material changes have introduced new considerations, but not fundamentally altered the weighting that was afforded to the benefits against the harms comparable to the 2022 resolution, and it's recommended the application be approved.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker, and that is Emma Sibley. If you could take the seat, please, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak My name is Emma Sibley from Turley, who are agents acting on behalf of Berkeley Homes as applicant for this item. This proposal forms the final phase of the strategic housing allocation known as Land West of Worthing Road or Broadacres, and we are pleased to present a scheme that continues to deliver high-quality homes in line with the Council's spatial strategy and the South Water Neighbourhood Plan. As you will be aware, the application previously received a resolution to grant planning permission at committee in 2020 and 2022. However, the lack of an agreed water neutrality strategy had prevented the Phase 5 Section 106 agreement from being signed and permission being issued. The applicant is now able to use the forthcoming Sussex North Water Certification Scheme to achieve water neutrality, to which Natural England has raised no objection to this approach. As a result of changing market conditions, the applicant is proposing amendments to both Phase 4, which is being considered under a separate application, and Phase 5, which is before you this evening. The total number of units is the same, albeit the number of homes are proposed to move from Phase 4 to Phase 5, and has resulted in an increase of 14 dwellings to Phase 5. The amendments are supported by a full suite of updated plans and reports reflecting changes to the scheme layout and house types, providing 94 open market homes, with the required number of affordable houses for the allocation having been delivered through the earlier phases and to be secured in the pending Phase 4 Section 73 application. The proposed amendments are considered betterments to the previous scheme that came before you in 2022, including refinement of the on-site play provision and link between play spaces in Phases 4 and 5, improving permeability. In addition, the landscape design has included significant tree planting and a sensitive change to existing ground levels to create additional interest within the proposed play spaces. Whilst the application is not subject to mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain, opportunities for ecological enhancements have also been integrated into the proposals. Approval of these amendments will enable Berkeley Homes to continue to deliver development in a highly sustainable location and provide much-needed family housing for the area, with a mix that now better aligns with the Council's evidence base for three-bedroom dwellings. The layout is considered to be an effective use of the site that recognises visual amenity and views from around the site, existing biodiversity features and residential amenity. Accordingly, it is considered that the previous resolution to grant permission should equally apply to these proposed revisions, and we respectfully request that your officer's recommendation is again agreed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it. Yeah, you're quick off the mark. I was about to open this for debate, but now I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, this doesn't increase the overall numbers that we gave outline permission for back in 2019 or whenever it was. This scheme and layout is better than the previous scheme in 2022. So the overall numbers, moving from 14 out of Phase 4 to 14 into Phase 5, I have no problem with it, and I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you. The Parish Council raised no objection. It complies with the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member wishing to make a comment on this application? No? Okay, then I will go to the vote. So, let's check my papers. Not outline plan permission. Bear with me a moment. Thank you. The recommendation is to approve planning mission subject to appropriate conditions and the completion of necessary Section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as is agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. All those in favour, please show.
That's 14, unanimous.
Okay. Thank you very much. Therefore, the application has been approved. I'm going to get on to numbers. Going to exchange laptops before we proceed.
Chairman, can I request a short comfort break?
There is a break after this one, if you can bear with us. Okay, in that, Councillor Livingston, we will have a 2-minute break. 2-minute break. If nobody else wants to go to where the kitchen or wherever, then please stay in your seat. Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, DC 21 1427. Reserved matters, Area 7, Mowbray Development Site, Horsham. And if the officer could please make their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Jason Hawkes, Principal Planning Officer. Before I start the presentation, there are 2 updates. Firstly, paragraph 6.23 on page 135 states that the build to rent properties will be managed by Legal and General. This is not the case. The units are to be delivered by Dandara, who have stated that we're working in partnership with a private rent provider, but not in a position at this stage to say who it is. Secondly, recommended condition 3 on page 1343 requires details of the air source heat pumps proposed. Since the report was published, the applicant has provided details of the heat pumps, which are shown to the rear properties or to the roofs of flats, and these details are considered acceptable. As such, this condition is to be changed to a regulatory condition requiring the implementation of the agreed details. This application relates to the Mowbray development site to the north of Horsham. This site relates to an area within phase 1 of the site known as Reserve Matters Area 7, which you can see here outlined in red. The site is to the southeast corner of the site, near to the A264 and Rusper Road. The majority of the buildings here to the north of the shown on this plan have now been demolished and a green space provided. As stated in the report, this application is subject to confirmation from the local lead flood authority that they're happy with the updated strategy. The LLFA have now confirmed no objection to this proposal. This is a reserve matters application for 221 dwellings, which follows the overall outline consent for descent granted in 2018. The application was submitted back in 2021. It's been delayed primarily due to water neutrality issues, which have now been addressed. This shows the master plan for the site. The site is accessed by a secondary road to the north. It's divided by a green walkway, which would connect up to the local centre to the north, and an east-west greenway, which has now been delivered. This plan shows the site set back from the A264 by open areas and the position of marker buildings and key corner buildings in the stars. Shows the layout of the 221 dwellings. Proposal is for 120 privately rented dwellings, 28 affordable dwellings, and 73 market dwellings. The provision of the private rented units and affordable housing is in accordance with the requirements of the legal agreement in the outline consent. So here we see the car parking layout. The scheme includes 395 spaces indicated in the colours here, which is in accordance with county parking standards. This shows the 10-year layout. As stated, nearly half the dwellings provided here would be privately rented units. It should be noted that the legal agreement includes requirements for provision of these units, including marketing them to Horsham District employees and residents. This is to provide what's known as housing for local need. So here we show proposed street scenes for units. You'll note the units have a distinctive modern design with a vertical emphasis. This is a slightly different approach to the housing already allowed and currently being built at phase 1 of the Mowbray site. However, the design is considered acceptable and will complement those already built with similar materials and detailing. So finally, some artist impressions. You can see the vertical emphasis here and the detailing and the modern approach. This is shows the rows of housing, which will an indication of what will be fronting the green spaces. And here's another indication of the type of housing proposed. Overall, this application is considered acceptable as outlined in the reports. It's been called into committee by Russ Parish Council. They objected on the grounds the proposal for 85 litres per day per person in the water neutrality statement is unenforceable. The parish feel that proposal needs to include an effective way to measure and enforce the actual water usage at each phase of the development, including the offsetting. In response, it should be noted that the Council and Natural England have accepted that 85 litres per day per person is achieved through the installation of water-saving measures, such as efficient fixtures and fittings, rainwater, etc., evidenced by the way of the water usage calculator within Part G of the building regulations. Natural England have not raised concern with the enforceability of this approach, neither have appeal inspectors for various appeals, whilst a Crawley local plan passed public examination with a specific policy restricting water consumption to 85 litres per day per person. In terms of enforcement, planning applications for new dwellings include a condition that no dwelling permitted shall be first occupied until evidence has been submitted to and improved in writing by the local planning authority that the approved water neutrality strategy for that dwelling has been implemented in full. The evidence shall include the specification of fittings and appliances used, evidence of their installation and completion of the as-built Part G water calculator or equivalent. It's therefore considered unnecessary to require additional conditions to monitor water usage for the proposed dwellings, or to initiate penalties if overall water use exceeds that projected for this phase. The Council therefore feels that sufficient measures are in place to enforce at its discretion the water neutrality requirements in the event it is considered necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the public speaker, and that is Robert Thompson, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Thompson and I'm a development manager for L&G, the applicant. Firstly, I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak this evening and also to thank the planning officers for their thorough and robust committee report, which explains the application well. L&G has been working with officers to bring forward the Mowbray scheme in North Horsham since early 2019. This application forms an important part of the housing delivery on the site and of the private rented units in particular. It was first made in 2021, but as you have heard, was put on hold pending a resolution of water neutrality, since when there have been a number of amendments that have resulted in the scheme you are considering this evening. As master developer, L&G is committed to delivering a sustainable, high-quality development and has invested significantly in highways and infrastructure improvements to facilitate the scheme. The new secondary school, Bowhunt School, was secured early to the benefit of the wider community. Additionally, we have secured approval and are progressing the delivery of a sports hub, community centre and substantial areas of high-quality public open space and play areas which will benefit the residents of Mowbray and beyond. We work closely with house builders to ensure the delivery of high-quality, sustainable homes in line with our overall vision for Mowbray. To date, more than 200 homes have been completed and a new community is gradually taking shape. The issue of water neutrality, with which I'm sure the committee is very familiar, has significantly slowed the pace of delivery of new homes at the scheme. Since the issue first arose, however, we have been working with your officers to find water neutrality solutions. To this end, we have reached agreement with Saxon Weald Housing Association to improve the water efficiency of existing properties within the Horsham district, which will ensure that the homes in this application place no net additional burden on the water supply. This is in accordance with the tested pilot scheme at Crawley, which was endorsed by Natural England and is now a well-established means of achieving water neutrality. Permission has also already been granted to another residential parcel within this scheme on the same basis. The Council's water certification scheme, SNOWS, is due to launch very shortly and will provide an alternative source of water credits to those provided via our agreement with Saxon Weald. We will also therefore have the option of using this scheme when it launches. L&G remain committed to working with Horsham District Council to ensure that the water neutrality of the proposed homes in this application is secured and can be sustainably delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No? Okay. Thank you. I will now open this for debate by the members. Thank you. Okay. No comments from any members? Okay. In that case, I will go to the vote. And it is to approve reserve matters, consent subject to no objection from lead local flood authority and appropriate conditions. All those in favour? Another unanimous.
14, that's unanimous.
Therefore, the approved reserve matters have been approved. Approved? Thank you. There will be a short break now. Unfortunately, there's no sandwiches for the members of the public, but there are sandwiches for the members.
All right, thank you. We'll let the officer give us the presentation, please.
This application site comprises of an access, one existing barn used for agricultural purposes, and a mess accommodation for when the applicants are operating within the site in its agricultural use. It's got currently a chemical toilet, a storage container, and an adjoining field shown within the blue line boundary. Is that okay? Right, okay.
Sorry, also, you didn't state what you were presenting at the very beginning. If
Oh.
you wouldn't mind starting all over again, maybe.
Peacock's Paddock and Storehouse Lane, Northheath, Pulborough. Yes, I can do. Okay. If everyone can hear me now. Is that better? Okay. The application site comprises of an access, one existing barn used for agricultural purposes, a mess accommodation for when the applicants are operating within the site in its agricultural use, a chemical toilet, a storage container, and an adjoining field shown within the blue line boundary. The next slide is an aerial photo of the site. You can see the neighbouring site, which was recently subject to an appeal, and that was dismissed. This site is generally bounded by mature hedgerows and trees, reinforcing the rural qualities of the area while creating a sense of containment within the wider landscape. This is just a slide to show some of the constraints. So there is a public right-of-way running to the east of the site, and then Laurel Cottage to the south, which is a Grade 2 listed building. This next slide is to show the distance from the nearest flood zone 3. It is fairly considerable, which you can see. And this slide is to show the surface water flooding area, which is outside of the application site. The next slide is a site layout plan, which seeks to change the use of the site such that it would have a caravan, touring caravan, and a day room. It would retain the existing barn and the existing access. I've just pointed to the various elements there so that you can see that the mobile home and the touring caravan would be partially screened by the existing barn. The next slide is to show a Google Street View photo. So obviously with Google Street View cars, they are at a slightly elevated height, and that's really so that you can see a little bit into the existing site currently, and the existing barn there you can see too. The next slide is just to show at normal height your visibility into the site, as if you were a pedestrian passing looking to go onto the public right-of-way, for example. So I've included the elevation plan so that you can see the barn-like appearance of the day room. It's essentially what you would probably expect to see within a rural landscape. And then these are just some pictures from within the site itself, and from when you're stood in the sort of caravan area looking out into the field. So this slide is to show when you're stood within the Stool Court recent appeal site. When I'm actually stood, I was stood on the public right-of-way itself. Oops. And I think this is quite useful to show the mature hedge and trees in the area that abuts the public right-of-way. And that's just going back to the proposed site layout. Okay.
Okay.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, we've got a few guys to speak. There's going to be two speakers who are going to speak for 3 minutes, and then a further 3 minutes on behalf of others. I'll give you a heads up when the first 3 minutes is up. You don't need to stop. I'll just say that's 3 minutes, and then you can just continue on as you wish. Okay, so we'll Alfie Yateman, please.
Hello. Just to confirm, I'm the only registered speaker and I was allocated 6 minutes rather than the 2 times 3 minutes.
Look, how you do it is up to you. As far as I'm aware, I've got it written down here that you're giving 3 minutes for yourself and 3 minutes for other residents. But
okay. Well, yeah.
Just let it play out. You'll have 6 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Chair or Vice Chair, members, good evening. I am Alfie Yetman. I am a chartered town planner, and I've been asked by various residents of Storehouse Lane to relay serious concerns they have about the application before you. Whilst these concerns have been raised in written objections, they have not been satisfactorily summarised or addressed in the committee report. I therefore take the opportunity to address these main concerns before you now. So starting with landscape impact, as noted in the committee report, the starting point should be, as established by National Planning Policy for Traveller Sites, that councils should very strictly limit new traveller sites developments in the open countryside, as is the case here. Notwithstanding objections from the landscape officer and the heritage officer, who also raised concerns about the landscape, the committee report downplays the size and impact of the development. There are at least 17 occasions where the development is described as either small scale, modest, low impact, or having no or insignificant harm. In particular, it's wholly incorrect to assert that the development would be tucked into the hedgerow, and it appears there's a lack of understanding about the nature of the proposed development. This includes a lack of knowledge of the site as it is, and this is indicated by the pre-commencement condition 6, which suggests the existing building should be demolished, but there is no such demolition being proposed. With a 15 by 5 metre barn, extensive hard-standing mobile caravan fencing, a lawn, formal driveway, gateway, portaloo, shipping container, etc., as you've seen in the photos, the site is already incongruous with the landscape and dilutes the rural character of the lane. The proposed day room would be substantial in scale, not dissimilar to that of the building. The floor footprint and the floor area is approximately 45 square metres, which is equivalent to a good-sized one-bedroom dwelling. It is also 6 metres high, which is about twice the area and the height of the equivalent day rooms that were suggested on the dismissed appeal site adjacent. The day rooms have all the trappings required for residential accommodation, including dedicated kitchen and bathroom areas. They should be treated as such in policy terms, including on their impact on landscape. No consideration has been given to the potential impact of the adjacent public right-of-way, particularly during winter. There has been no assessment of potential views through the hedgerow, and it should be noted that the adjacent appeal site was found to be visually intrusive from the footpath, even if it was considered to be buffered by new planting that was proposed. So similar to the recent appeal decision, there would be significant urbanising effect from the development and harm to the character and the appearance of the countryside, and this is unacceptable in national and local policy terms and should be afforded substantial weight in your decision making. On heritage matters, you will see that the council's conservation officer has objected due to the impact on the setting of the adjacent Grade 2 listed Laurel Cottage. The level of harm identified by the heritage officer appears reasonable and justified.
Just to let you know, you've had a little more than 3 minutes.
Thank you. The case officer leans heavily on the adjacent appeal site, but this application is not directly comparable, particularly given the increased sale of the proposed day room and the difference in location between the two sites. Accordingly, the case officer has not followed any of the legal tests required when less than substantial harm is identified. There is no assessment of public benefit against the identified harm, as is required by paragraph 214 of the MPPF. Making a decision on this basis, therefore, would not be legally sound. Turning to water neutrality, the committee report suggests that the Sussex North Water Certification Scheme is available, and that is because Policy 23 allows for unallocated sites to come forward in the countryside. However, this is not the case, and is because the policy is subject to a number of criteria, including the site being required to be located in or near to existing settlements, otherwise part of an allocated strategic location. Clearly, this is not the case, and then therefore the certification scheme is not applicable. Furthermore, the wording of draft condition 4 is not appropriate. If the certification scheme was to be followed, the applicant should be made to demonstrate how the water use per person per day would be limited to 85 litres. The clause in III of the draft condition only applies when clause II is triggered, and that is incorrect. I'd just like to note also on drainage that the Environment Agency has objected due to the lack of drainage information being provided. The Council's validation checklist requires all development proposals for new buildings and/or hard surfacing to be accompanied by a surface water drainage statement. It is unclear why this has not been followed in this instance, and the Council's policies have not been adhered to. And the final point is regarding sustainability and the sustainability of the location. There is a requirement, as noted, for traveller developments to be in or near to existing settlements and within a reasonable distance of a range of local services. There have been a number of dismissed appeals for development in the immediate area, citing concern about the lack of access to services.
That's time. Thanks, Alfie.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mitchell, please.
There was a little bit of confusion with me personally over how much time I had. So I'm just going to hit on the points that I feel are most important, give you the information that I feel is most relevant, and see how much I can fit into the 6 minutes given. Yeah, because I basically.
Thank you, Gemma. We'll give you.
Give me the heads if it's.
That's fine. We'll just when I call 6 minutes, that's time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so see how you can get on until
Okay.
then. Great, thank you.
This first speech has been prepared by our agent, Dr. Angus Murdoch, who sadly cannot be here this evening. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to address you in support of our planning application today. As you know, our own planning officer, as well as head of development, both support our application being approved here today, principally because of the proposal complies in full with the Traveller Site Policy, HDPF 23 in the adopted plan. In addition, the titled balance is engaged in accordance with the paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework of 2024, given the common ground that there is no 5-year supply of traveller sites, as well as a considerable and worsening level of unmet need. Indeed, the need situation has increased by more than 25% between the 2020 and 2023 gypsy and traveller accommodation assessments, with at least 128 pitches now required and no allocations to meet the need, in conflict with government policy in place for some 20 years. With no objections from the county ecologist or Natural England and the Secretary of State's inspector finding that no harm would be caused to heritage assets by the adjacent unauthorised development, that is 400 times larger than our proposal. And can I just add, the adjacent development is nothing to do with us. We're completely different.
It is clear that the presumption in favour of approving this application provided for by paragraph 11D applies as no strong reason to refuse that planning permission exists. Furthermore, throughout the lifetime of this application, we have worked constructively with officers and consultees to address and resolve all the issues that have arisen. But more than that, we have also gone above and beyond what was required. For example, by providing the arboricultural reports at application level rather than subsequently by condition. Moreover, as our ecologist explains, the habitats on site are low quality for great crested newts, and as demonstrated by the rapid risk assessments provided within the PEA, the likelihood of an event on site is considered highly unlikely due to the scale of the works and the area of habitat involved. This tool has been devised by Natural England and is used to determine the requirements for licensing for great crested newts. While there are no anticipated impacts for great crested newts, the applicants have obtained a district licence from NatureSpace to provide additional mitigation measures for this species. In the unlikely event that great crested newts are recorded on site, the development will be covered by a licence and no further events would occur. Sufficient survey effort has been completed on this site to determine the impacts of the proposals and inform the planning application. The information has been reviewed by the county ecologist who has raised no objection to the development, and there is no reason to refuse the planning permission on ecology matters. Finally, there are compelling real-life issues relating to this family's personal circumstances that, together with the best interests of the children, attract additional substantial weight in support of the application, as was fully and transparently evidenced during the application process. Despite these great needs, no unauthorised development has been undertaken on site. Rather, the family have complied at every turn with planning policy and government regulation. Our actions in this regard speak for themselves and provide
Give you a heads up, Jim.
comfort,
That's
thank
3
you,
minutes.
that this family will be good neighbours and valuable members to the community if given the opportunity to live on their own land in peace and security. This is from me. There are lots of factors leading to us being in front of you here today. My worsening health and us needing a stable, permanent home being the most important. Some of you will know I've been fighting cancer for 15 years, and the toll this has taken on my body is huge. And as time goes on, and as I survive one treatment or surgery after the other, the list of conditions I suffer gets longer. With physical trauma comes mental exhaustion for the entire family, and we've all suffered considerably, and our girls and myself continue to need counselling to this day. Another driving force is my mum losing her sight due to degenerative eye condition. The land we currently live on belongs to my mum, and she has had to make a very difficult decision to ask us to find her own home so that when the time comes she can sell and downsize when she can no longer see well enough. Okay, this next bit is from another person, Lucy Monday. I was speaking today in support of my dear friends Tony, Gemma, Casey and Willow. I wish to bring objections raised by Pulborough and West Chelsea Parish councillors that should not be taken into consideration when making this very important life-altering decision today. Objection 1, no sewage or drainage strategy and harm to the footpath. Please see reports stated on the portal as being received on the 8th of May of this year by IBEX Consulting Engineers and HR Wallingford, which cover these subjects in detail and put in place the plans that shall be followed upon development of this small site. With regards to the footpath is not within this plot. Objection 2, because of harm to the environment and ecology, protected species and disruption to ecosystems, and a further objection was received because a BNG statement has not been submitted. We invite you to see that in fact this has been done and the related documents are invisible on the HDC planning portal dated as being received on the 21st of January this year, titled BNG Metric Assessments, BNG Metric Calculation. This work was carried out by Provision, and in addition to this, please see 3 documents dated as received on the 31st of July, titled Tree Information and Protection Area Plan. I'm going to speed through this a little bit. We are doing everything that we can to tick everything off. So the third objection I want to raise is lack of services, schools, healthcare and public transport. This family will not place any additional stress on infrastructure and will not have trouble using any of these services. Willow is enrolled at school and is just going into her final year. Casey has been enrolled in college full-time since leaving school, and the family have all been registered with our local healthcare since birth. Public transport is rarely used by this family, but since starting college, Casey has had to use the bus when Gemma's been too unwell to drive her. This family is already well integrated into the community. Okay. We've covered the notes. Objection 5 is increased water usage and claims that the development is not water neutral.
Jim, I think that's time up.
Is that it?
That's
Okay,
it. But thank you. You've made some,
Thank
made
you.
some very useful points. Thank you very much.
I wish I could have done more.
That's okay. You'll be fine.
Okay, so I am going to read a statement from John Campbell, District Councillor for Pulborough, Coldwaltham and Amberley. Residents have raised significant concerns regarding this application. Those material to the decision are: 1. The neighbourhood plan. This is outside the built-up area as identified in the Pulborough Neighbourhood Plan, which is scheduled for referendum on the 4th of September. As per the recent training, this now carries more weight. 2. Objections by Horsham District Council officers. The Conservation Officer, Section 3.3 of the committee report provides a sound reason to refuse the application, concluded by this will lead to suburbanisation of the countryside. The Landscape Officer, Section 3.13 of the committee report notes that the proposal would adversely affect and would likely be significant in the context of Horsham District Planning Policies 23 and 26. An arboricultural impact assessment is recommended to ascertain this. However, the committee report, published on the 24th of July, recommending approval, was made before the assessment dated the 31st of July had been provided. Therefore, the recommendation to approve was made before key information was available to make that decision. Is this appropriate? 3. Environmental health. Environmental health has objected as further information is required. Specifically, this is insufficient to permit a decision on whether the site can support the proposed use at all, as disposal of sewage is fundamental to such a decision. Packaged treatment plants require an outflow for the treated sewage, but the site within the red line has insufficient space for a drainage field, and there is no indication of a stream or ditch in the plans to take the outflow. Information is needed on which scheme is proposed, and whichever it is, much more detail is required to show that the site can deal with the outflow. 4. Stalcott Farm site next to the application. Section 6.10 notes, the site next to this application, Stalcott Farm, siting of 4 static caravans, was refused. It has not been accepted that 1 or 2 pitches for gypsy and travellers could be accommodated without causing material harm to the character of this area. The appeal decision for Stalcott Farm, published by the inspector, made it very clear it failed as it conflicts with the HDPF policies 23E, 25 and 26. There would also be conflict with paragraphs 135C and 187B of the NPPF. It also upheld the enforcement notice. In conclusion, the inspector wrote, I have found that the proposal conflicts with the development plan read as a whole. No other material considerations, including the NPPF and PPTS, National Planning Policy Framework and Planning Policy for Traveller Sites, have been shown to indicate that a decision should be taken otherwise than in accordance with it. I conclude that the appeal is dismissed. 5. Consistency. 4 previous applications in or close to Storehouse Lane, a very narrow lane with no footpath, were refused. Stalcott, DC 241573, the site next door. Roseacre, DC 200411. Storehouse Lodge, DC 21600, where there was already a small barn. Janet's Farm appeal. 3 applications were considered at appeal and defended by HDC. All were dismissed for several reasons, but including policies 26, 33, 32 of the HDPF. Therefore, approval could be inconsistent with decisions previously made by HDC and the planning inspectors. 6. Number of gypsy and traveller pitches. Section 6.4 identifies 93 pitches were required in January 2020. This was updated in December 2023 to 128 pitches, indicating the need between 2023 to 2040, the plan period. However, the 2023 to 2040 local plan submitted for examination in July 2024 identifies only 77 pitches, which is correct. I assume it would be the local plan 2023 to 2040, which has not been withdrawn or found unsound. 7. Scale and mass. The proposed location and height of the day room means it is clearly visible from the adjoining properties Woodside and Laurel Cottage, a heritage asset. It is not shielded by the barn as it is 2 metres higher. The static van on boundary of the public footpath and less than 14 metres from the static van currently on the adjacent site at Stalcott Farm. 6.10 of the report implies that this is acceptable. Based on the material before you this evening, this application should be refused. Thank you, Councillor John Campbell, Ward Councillor. Okay, and now I have another statement from Councillor Paul Clark. The Planning Committee report covers a number of policy breaches caused by this application. Policies mentioned in part are wholly, 22, 23, 25, 26, 32, 33 and 34. The report makes no mention of the impact of this application on policies 2, 3 or 4. All these policies have been invoked on previous applications close to this location on Storehouse Lane, which were all refused, both for gypsy and traveller sites and housing. Our expert officers object to this application, and yet it is recommended for approval. This seems inconsistent. HGC Conservation object to the residential use of the site. The issue is that the site is an agricultural smallholding site, not a dwelling in the countryside, which is what it will become. Environmental health officers object based on private water supply and other grounds waste, water and sewage. The landscape officer objects strongly to the scheme and has strong reservations on the siting of the caravan. Officers are always telling us that we must consider the evidence of what is in front of us and nothing else. At the appeal, the reasons for objection from officers to that application are the same as for this one. The arguments remain as strong for this one as it did before. However, as I have said, we have to consider the application in front of us, not the one next door, and so should our officers. The main plank in this report's argument is that this site should be permitted based on the appeal decision of the plot next door, paragraphs 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3. The presumption is that we should refuse this application, and if it goes to appeal, that the appeal inspector will follow the logic of the inspector that ruled on the site next door. Evidence shows that inspectors follow their own idiosyncratic ways. Just because one decides one way doesn't mean that another will decide in the same way. The report only references policy 23E, but the site does have an impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. Furthermore, it certainly is not sensitively designed to mitigate any impact on its surroundings. The application also fails under 23B. The site is served by a safe and convenient vehicular and pedestrian access. It is not 23C. The site can be properly serviced, etc., can it? 23D. The site is located in or near to existing settlements within reasonable distance of a range of local services and community facilities, in particular schools and essential health services. It is not. In terms of highways' impact on sustainability, as expected, county highways have no objection. Policy 23B of the HTPF, as stated in paragraph 6.31, talks about safe and convenient vehicular and pedestrian access. The site cannot demonstrate safe pedestrian access as Storehouse Lane and Gay Street have no pavements. The distance from the site to the A29 is approximately 730 metres. North Heath has no shops, no schools, no bus stops and no facilities whatsoever. The A29 has a narrow footway where the speed limit is the national speed limit. The nearest convenience store, a filling station on the A29, is 1,350 to 1,400 metres from the site, about a mile, with the nearest supermarket a further 1,750, 1,800 metres total, over 2 miles. The school is close to 2.5 to 2.75 miles from the site, or 4,000 metres, and the doctor's surgery, similar distance, not a sustainable location. The application also fails under Policy 25, the natural environment and landscape character, paragraph 3, Policy 32, the quality of new development, paragraph 2 and 3, and Policy 33, development principles 2 and 5. Policy 34, cultural and heritage assets, is touched on in the report, paragraph 6.20, but the application fails under paragraph 4. Make a positive contribution to the character and distinctiveness of the area, and 7. Retain and improves the setting of heritage assets. The hedging in the summer seems adequate, but in the winter, deciduous hedging provides no cover at all. No consideration has been given to the impact on the next door property to the south. The amenity of local residents has been already badly affected by the previous planning decision on this site, and to grant planning permission for a pitch and day room on this site makes things worse. Paragraph 6.29 is a problem. Officers do not believe that a CEMP is necessary. In view of the vandalism and mayhem caused by a previous illegal occupation next door, a condition is necessary to tighten up access down Storehouse Lane, ensuring no damage is carried out to neighbouring properties or curtilages. All these are good reasons to refuse the application.
Thank you, Melissa. Right, back to you.
I'm going to focus first on responding to the speaker's points about the impact on the setting of the listed building, Laurel Cottage. So in the, just to refer to the neighbouring appeal site, what contributed to the historic fabric of Laurel Cottage, the inspector found, was its materiality, construction and open frontage. And they concluded that it would not have a detrimental impact on the historic fabric or architectural understanding of that building. This is opposite the site, but there's no reason why this would, which is screened via the existing barn, would warrant a refusal for that reason. I would also like to say that it is less than substantial harm at the lower end of the scale. In response to the speaker's point that it wouldn't meet the legal tests in respect of not considering any balance, it does, within the committee report, weigh up the reasoning behind the conclusion of the officer. In this instance, the appeal decision was a material planning consideration, and the inspector's the committee report does consider that. Additionally, I would like to say that the appeal site was for 4 pitches, hard standing, day rooms, and this is obviously of a much reduced scale by comparison with existing hard standing, existing barn, existing access. So in terms of the new additional development that would be within the site is by comparison much more limited. Going to the point in respect of landscape and tree impact, I would say it's not wholly true to say that there's no way to mitigate the harm. In the landscape consultant response, they made it quite clear that there could be some mitigation which would be adequate to provide for the harm produced from the development. The holding objection largely hinged on the request for further information in respect of the root protection area of an oak tree to the east of the site. The tree officer was since consulted formally. Previously, verbal discussions happen during the course of an application to determine whether a formal consultation is actually warranted. In this instance, as a result of the landscape consultation response, it was deemed necessary to get a tree officer response, and they considered that because there's no new area of hard standing in that location, it's not likely to impinge on the root protection area of that tree. They did say, however, that it's likely that some lateral pruning would be required, and the application would be acceptable in this regard, subject to this being to a minimal extent, which can be conditioned as per the tree mitigation report that the applicant submitted. So in this respect, I think given the mitigations proposed and the conditions attached to the officer's report, the harm can be mitigated against. The members' comments. Okay. I'm going to start with the SEMP, the Construction Management Plan, in regards to environmental health, and why the decision was taken to conclude that it's not necessary to attach a condition to secure a SEMP plan. In this instance, because of the transient nature of mobile homes and touring caravans, the degree of built form that would actually be required to be constructed in the site is very modest. It is a timber day room. So it wouldn't be necessary in this instance to condition that. I wouldn't meet the conditions tests. It has to be necessary for the development to be acceptable. In this instance, it wouldn't be necessary to make the development acceptable. So it's not something that we would be able to attach. Sorry, one moment. In response to the representation from Councillor John Campbell, the inspector did consider the nearby appeal decisions within Storehouse Lane, and it was concluded that little weight would be attributed to the other schemes. In large part, the appeals and applications mentioned referred to housing development, it has a different policy framework to gypsy and traveller sites. So in this instance, the most pertinent policy would be policy 23. In the inspector's report, they mentioned that given the different policy framework, the comparisons wouldn't be relevant. Essentially, it wouldn't be comparable.
Just touching on the numbers, obviously you'll be aware we have a gypsy and traveller site need, an unmet need. Whilst the submission draft carries little to no weight at this stage, that wouldn't even meet our needs. And in fact, the draft policy in our submission had a similar one to policy 33 of our current plan, in that other sites would be considered as we are considering this one, because the numbers wouldn't be enough. So I think, I think that the definition of gypsies and travellers has not long changed, and that increased our need. So the bottom line is we have a need, and this pitch would go towards that need.
Yeah, in terms of the councillor's point about sustainable modes of transport, the PPTS mentions that a site doesn't have to be within a walking distance to be considered acceptable in terms of its location. It is acknowledged that it is a rural location, but that doesn't automatically mean that it's in an isolated location that would be unsuitable for gypsy and traveller sites. Next, I'd like to say about the public right-of-way, and it might be relevant to go back to this site photo from Stalcott. You can see that I was stood on the public right-of-way in that image, and you can see the application site, which is to the left, I don't know if my mouse is showing there, is such a mature hedgerow and tree line that the site itself isn't visible, and that remains the case even if you walk up to the very end of the Stalcott site. So you can walk up right to the end of that, and it's you don't really get glimpses of it at all. So the appeal decision next door was a very different matter. You can see the proximity of that caravan there to the public right-of-way, and because of the quantum of development and its proximity, the inspector had no choice really but to conclude that it was going to have a significant adverse impact on the public right-of-way. But you wouldn't be able to see our application site here from the public right-of-way, such that it wouldn't be logical really to conclude that it's going to have a significant detrimental impact. In terms of the snows comment from the speaker earlier, 85 litres per person per day is an achievable figure, and it was discussed with the Snows team during the course of the application that this proposal would be eligible for access to Snows, although it's
not Snows anymore.
It's not Snows anymore, sorry. It's SNWCS, I think. So they would be eligible for that, and that would be an appropriate form of mitigation. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Does anybody want to? Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. One clarification and one question, I think, if that's okay. The clarification is, and you were referring to it in the last part of your answer, environmental health talk about concerns over the water quality needed for a residential occupation of the site. The report says that there is already mains water provided to the site. So the expectation is that there would be increased mains water demand through the people living on the site, but that could be offset through the mitigation of the SNCWS. Is that my understanding correct? Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
The second question is about the weight to be given to the planning inspector's outcome. You said it is a material consideration, of course it is, but what weight should we on the committee give it?
There isn't a percentage I can give you, Councillor Mercer. Ultimately, it is the site immediately next door, so I would say it carries significant weight in terms of having that decision. But it's not just the decision itself; it's what the decision says. The decision obviously raises various concerns around landscape, particularly in the public right of way. But then I think well, how do they then relate to this proposal? And my colleague has said, well, the public right of way is not visible from this site, so it's a different context. So therefore, it wouldn't be reasonable to raise that concern. The landscape impact and the impact on the street scene is very different because the caravan itself is behind the barn. The day room is designed. Yes, it is slightly higher, but that's so you can get that kind of natural agricultural appearance of it in terms of its character. So when you look down the access, you see what could be described as an agricultural appearance. So yes, it's very relevant, but it's about what it says, and therefore how do you how do you assess that in the context of this scheme and the constraints on this site? Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've listened carefully to the concerns expressed by the agent representing local residents. I've also listened to the statements made by two local ward councillors, and I've also listened to the applicant's case. Can the officers just explain how much weight we should give to the personal circumstances of the applicant, please?
I think ultimately you would only generally give weight to personal circumstances if it wasn't otherwise acceptable, and therefore you would consider those in terms of are there further mitigating circumstances. This is relatively straightforward in my view. We have a significant shortfall of gypsy and traveller sites. In our view, it meets the development plan, and therefore I think it's not necessary to explore further beyond that. So I think that would be my suggestion. I don't know if my legal colleague has any further points to make on that.
Nothing further. That's exactly the correct advice.
Councillor Raby.
I think what's relevant is that this is a very clear and personal example of a shortage of housing, which is why we have a tilted balance. I get many correspondence, because I'm responsible for the housing list, of families in dire circumstances, and that's why we have the tilted balance. And although we've got a particular case that's clearly moving, We've got lots of those, so I'm minded to support this because of the issue of the lack of supply. I find that very compelling, so that will definitely be influencing my decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Well, I think we just move on and have a vote on this one then. Right. To approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour?
Nine in favour.
Thank you. Sorry, against? 3 against, and therefore no abstentions. Cool. Well, thank you. That's approved. Okay, on to the last matter. DC 250279. Now this is council land. Oh yes, sorry. Can we retrieve our?
Oh, and land.
Retrieve. Yes, I'm about to head off and finish the meeting. I
back.
know.
Yeah.
I'll go grab him.
I get the power. I tell you. Suddenly I got all this power. No, he'd be very upset if I'd wind things up. Good night. Thank you.
It's awful, isn't it? There's so many people and their circumstances just appalling.
Right decision.
Yeah, no, great. Great
One
for
of the
them.
things about this is, 99 times.
Yeah.
Across the board. We lost the Jones.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that'll be right. Well, you nearly missed out completely. I've got a sort of a power rush. I was going to finish the meeting off. Welcome back, Chairman.
Thank you. We're now on to item number 10, DC 250279, Horsham Olympic Football Club, Robert Way, Horsham. Thank you. If the officer could make their presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the application site is within the built-up area boundary of Horsham. Is that better? Sorry. Yeah, I've been told I've got a quiet voice. The application proposes 4 football dugouts positioned on either side of 2 11v11 youth football pitches. And this slide is to demonstrate the location of the dugouts and the fencing. My understanding in terms of the word dugout used to describe these shelters is that originally they are meant to be dug into the ground, and over time it was decided that they wouldn't be. So in this slide we can see the position of the dugouts just here where my mouse is. There's 1, 2, and then on the other pitch over here. This is a site plan that's been replicated because it's not on both of these plans. So on the bottom site location plan there, or block plan, you can see the dugouts, and up on the one above is the fencing. So it's a replacement site boundary fence, which is a mesh metal material, and then these are ball stops, which you'd probably expect in a football pitch. Okay, so the ball stops are different in terms of heights. So one new ball stop would be 25 metres in width and 4 metres in height, and the other would be 25 metres in width and 3 metres in height. The replacements for the two that are already there would be 7 metres in height, and the other would be 4 metres in height. There we go. Next one is so this is as a dugout. It's on a concrete base. It's not in any way dug out. But they've got a fairly utilitarian appearance. They are small in scale, and they are just designed for shelter from the rain when watching football. So this is just when you're stood within the car park. That built form on site is the existing football facilities that serve the club. And that's towards the tree line so that you can see the pitches themselves and the site boundary treatment currently. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There are no public speakers on this one, so opening up for debate by members. Anyone wish to make a comment on this? Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that all these football clubs are controlled by the Football Association, and as they progress, they are asked to provide certain facilities, and dugouts are one of them. So without those, perhaps they would be relegated from a league. So it's only a question of really them progressing. So I don't think we've got any choice, or we shouldn't have any choice but to accept it.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wishing to comment? Okay, therefore I will go to the vote on this, and it is to recommend Planning Commission subject to appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Therefore, the application has been approved. Okay, urgent business. There is none from me. So finally, I'd like to thank the officers for their support and guidance this evening, and members for your contribution.
Can I just clarify?
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish you all a safe journey home. And at 20:05, I bring the meeting of the Planning Committee to close. But please could members remain in their seats. Thank you.